I wanna take a breath. I'm falling in love. I'm falling in love. I wanna hold your hand. Don't leave me alone. Don't leave me alone. You make me high. Oh yeah. You're by my side.
So because I am recovered, it makes it so that I can speak to a borderline and really kind of get through and be understood. And even with that, I notice that there are times when I talk to a borderline about what it takes to recover, and some really simple but profound concepts kind of miss the borderline until I've repeated it a few times. And it's because it's one of those little obvious things. It's so obvious. If it was a snake, it would have bit you. And it takes a minute to be able to see it. And so I don't want this to be one of those moments. I want to be able to describe a thing and really show you how this disorder can come to be, and have you actually grasp it and get it. So I made some coffee. I woke up thinking about this, and decided to just get up and come and sit down in the dark house with everybody asleep upstairs and make this video. So one of the first things that I learned about BPD is how I got it. And I was taught that it is when you take an emotionally vulnerable child and they are born into an invalidating set of circumstances. And so I've spent a lot of the past 20 years of my life thinking about the thing or things in my childhood that could have created this for me. To tell you a little bit about me, I was born into a very violent home. My dad was a police officer. He was an alcoholic. My mom was a housewife, and she had her own emotional problems. And the two of them together were like oil and water psychologically. They should not have been together, and it created a lot of violent situations. My holidays were spent with my family fighting, and that sounds very innocuous, fighting. What does that mean? And it would get ugly. What's interesting to note is that while I was born into a violent situation, highly dysfunctional, I was also very, very loved. I was Daddy's little girl, and my mom, while she was broken, she meant to love her kids. That was a thing. It was very important to her, and she handled it wrong in a lot of ways, but her heart was always with her children, and she loved us deeply. And while I have a lot of memories that were very violent and abusive and confrontational, I also have a lot of memories of laughter and joy. And so this is not about bad parenting. While bad parenting did happen for me, a lot of love poured into my world. But ironically, the thing that started it was my mother trying to teach me to be respectful in social settings. Because I was born very, very shy. In my early childhood, I wouldn't talk to anybody. I was terrified to meet strangers, whether they were my age or not. I can remember being young and seeing other little kids playing and thinking, oh, I really, really wanted to play with that little girl. And it was everything I could do to inch over and play in that general area and hope that that child would ask me if I wanted to play. So there were times when my mom would be talking to a friend or meet a lady that she knew at the grocery store or one of my dad's colleagues from work. And I was the little girl who would climb underneath her mother's dress and cling to her leg. And my mom wanted to teach me to be polite to the adults around me. So she would pry me from her leg and stand behind me and literally push me in front of her and force me to say hello and to speak to these adults, to strangers. She would force me into situations where I couldn't be that shy. It was such a big deal, and she was determined to not let my shyness hinder me. And so in order to teach me not to be shy, she kind of threw me in the deep end. I can remember the feeling of her prying me from her leg and being terrified, debilitated inside, and feeling that stretch and that sense of abandonment and betrayal of what she was doing. And there was absolute helplessness. There was nothing I could do about it. And then listening to her force me. My mom was a determined woman, and my parents were a lot of things, but when my dad said stop, you stopped, and when my mom said do, you do. And hearing her from behind me say hello, just terror and shock and abandonment and betrayal and horror, and to have to say hello to this person, and forcing myself, hello, hello. And it was brutal for me as a little girl. It was too much. And anybody who knows me now, anybody who knew me growing up through junior high or high school, I was not shy. I mean, she cured me, and she would make jokes about it. It's the worst thing I ever did. If she would have known, she wouldn't have. It is almost comedic how such a simple thing created such a thing. It's like setting off a bomb with a feather. But that was the beginning of me not knowing how to regulate my emotions, not knowing what I'm supposed to feel in any situation. And everything after that was just a compilation of a lifetime of emotional dysregulation, of not being able to know what I'm supposed to be feeling or how I'm supposed to be, and of being attached to other people's perspective of me and what other people think of me being more important than what is best for me. Should a shy child be left a shy child? Absolutely. Absolutely. If your child does not want to kiss their Aunt Susie can suck it up. It's like there's some part of me that always knew what it was that created it. And I just didn't see it. It was in plain sight. And so it begins. And I can remember feeling awkward in social settings throughout elementary and junior high and high school. And I did a lot of masking it with that outward acting out behavior. It was a mask for the internal, I don't know really what's going on here. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to feel what I'm actually feeling. And it never did really resolve itself. It only continued to get worse and amplify as I got older. And I could only be in relationship with certain personality types for certain lengths of time before it would all break down again. And I knew that part of it was me. Part of it was the other person and how they treated me, but part of it was me and how I approached the situation. And I knew that, but I couldn't do anything about it because I didn't have any skills. I didn't know where to begin. So it wasn't until I was about 30 that I actually got diagnosed. And it was because I had gotten into a relationship with a married man. And, you know, the drama from the whole leave your wife, go back to your wife, leave your wife, she finds out about me thing. I ended up going to therapy with him. I guess we're working on our relationship. It's laughable. Anyway, that's when I met Richard. I started seeing Richard Ebling, and he was the perfect combination of everything in order for me to hear my diagnosis and be supported in that. And he hung in there with me through it all. I saw him every week for a year and a half, and then every other week for another 6 months after that. And I did a lot of research. I ended up going to BPD Central online and found a chat group called A Borderline Perspective. I felt like I had gotten a handle on it and had done so much work within myself, and I was ready for a relationship. And I met my husband, and it was the first conversation I had with him was, "Hey, I have been diagnosed with a disorder, and I feel like I'm recovered, and I felt capable of having a conversation and communicating and being honest about my feelings." And we got married, and it wasn't even, honestly, we weren't even married yet before my BPD started showing up strong. And that's when everything kicked into high gear. And I'm still married to him. So, my goal for doing all of these videos is to put a message out there in the world that you can recover. Not only can you recover, but you can recover inside of a relationship, as long as both people really want to do the work. And there's really 4 things that I can see that a borderline needs to know in order to no longer qualify for this disorder. And that's being accountable for how I feel, learning to let go, knowing that my thoughts create my emotions, and self-love. These 4 things in combination, or one or the other, in any given situation, will shift the tide of all the triggers, of all the dysregulation, will put an end to falling into that black hole. One of the biggest things that I hear from borderlines is that, well, you recover, but I'm not you, and I don't think it's possible for me. Every borderline that I have ever talked to starts out from that space, because that's what it looks like. And I get it. It looked like that for me as well. It is so disheartening and discouraging to be in that space. But my goal in these videos is to show you how you can recover and to dispel that lie, because it is absolutely a lie. I was as sick as they come. This video is to tell you my story and to hopefully illustrate to you a way that you can slow down and take a look in your life and realize your space where it began for you, and know that it doesn't have to be about bad parenting or bad childhood. I mean, we all have those, yes, but really a simple act of a mom being a good mom can start the whole thing into play. So you're going to be hearing it a lot from me. You can recover. So stay with me. I hope that you will click subscribe and just continue to watch my videos. If you have any questions, ask. I'd be happy to answer them for you. Thanks for watching.